This tutorial provides information about basic case intake into CMS after you have contacted the friend and obtained basic information about their identification, their household, and their needs. So you start, as always, with your home screen. This is what CMS opens to when you first sign in, and you go down to case intake. You single click on case intake. Throughout CMS, all you need to do is single click. You get the client profile, and first you should note that anything that is marked with a red asterisk is required. Later on, as we are entering information following the home visit, it will give you another opportunity to update the client profile, and it will require additional information such as gender, ethnicity, marital status, address be included. What we do at St. Michael, we always have the first and last name and a telephone number and an address when we do the client profile. If we know it, we try to provide the gender, ethnicity, and marital status, because all of those end up being required fields later. So let's start off with entering the first and last name of the client, putting the gender, putting the ethnicity, marital status. Through the phone discussions, we've been told by John that he's divorced. If you don't know, you can also select unknown. Put the telephone number. You don't have to put the hyphens, it will format it for you. It's very important nowadays, particularly during the pandemic, when we can't have in-home visits and our only contact with the friends are through their telephones, which oftentimes have voicemails that are full, to get their email address. So try to put in the email address, because it really does give us a good way to communicate. If for any reason you don't have a way to communicate with them by email where you are not disclosing your personal email, for example, some people have created Gmail accounts that they use just for St. Michael's, St. Vincent de Paul. But if you would like for one of us to send an email to you from the St. Vincent de Paul email account, which most of you know is svdpatstmichael@gmail.com. All you have to do is send an email to me, and I will arrange to have your email sent out through the St. Michael Gmail account. So in this case, we're going to put in an email because we managed to get it during our telephone home visit with the friend when we were gathering information. For the address, on the first line, you should put the street address and put the apartment number. On the state, a little shortcut is if you hit the key T twice, it'll take you right to Texas. This is the only information you need to enter. If you know that the person is a veteran, you can certainly select that either they speak English, that they're a veteran, but it's absolutely not necessary. Other aid, again, if you know it, you can enter it, but it's not something that we often refer to. So when you finish putting this basic information in, you go to the next tab. See here at the top right. It will now go through a series of 3 screens identifying the client to see if in this case, John Doe has already been entered into the system. And we did have him entered at one point, but we deleted the record. We use him for training purposes. So it'll show close matches. If there's an exact match, usually it's on this first line. And all that is telling you is that there may be an active case that is already open or one that we recently had closed. And so what happens if you see an exact match, one of the things you can do is immediately go to search. And let's say that we believe that Joe Blow is an exact match. You can go to search, you can go to cases, clear it out and put last name. If you don't know the entire spelling of the last name, you can put a % and it'll do anything that has the first 3 letters BLO. You don't have to put the first name unless you get too many responses to your search, but up at the top right, you hit search. And sure enough, we've got Joe Blow entered twice. We can look and see that one was opened September 21, 2020, and who it was assigned to. You can open the case, check the status of it, and see whether or not there's any information in there. But typically, what you do at this point, if you believe that it's an open case and that the person is already being helped, you can write an email to the Vincentian that the case is assigned to saying that this person has called once again. Would they please call him or her back since they've already had a home visit and have a relationship? If it's a closed case, you can always check on visit to see when the visit was conducted, how long ago, was it within the 12-month rule. During the pandemic, we have been fairly liberal in not enforcing the 12-month rule. If we had helped somebody either early in the pandemic or immediately prior to the pandemic, and even some instances where we had just helped them for a fairly modest amount, and we believe that their situation is an emergency where they're about to be evicted or about to have their lights turned off, or that they currently need food, and we decide we're going to assist them again. But again, you can get all of this information from doing a search, seeing what the situation was, seeing what the request was, and things of that nature. So once you've researched that, you can go back to where you were on the intake, and there's 2 ways of doing that. One way is to hit exit, and it will take you back to the screen before, and you just keep hitting exit until you're back into where you had left off, which was this screen. Another way, just so you know, at any point in time, you can get back to the input screen, the intake screen, by going to home, going to my assigned cases, and it'll show you the case that you were working on. And instead of having a case number, it has INQ, inquiry, because until you have gone through sufficient number of screens and entered enough information on intake, it is nothing more than just an inquiry, and a case has not been developed yet. By the way, when you are in the inquiry stage, some people use that just to search. It's an alternative to searching CMS. If you ever want to get some information and you decide you found everything you needed and you want to delete that record, you don't want to create a new case, you can always hit cancel, and cancel will totally delete the record, and there'll be nothing in the system for it. So please understand that. Some people think cancel is a way of getting back to a prior screen. It's not. Exit is a way to get to your prior screen. Cancel actually deletes a record. So again, we have filled out the client profile. We click next, and we got to the first step of client identification, where it's looking for a match for the phone number. The next screen will check the email, the street address, and it'll look to see if there's any exact matches. You hit next again in the top right. It now checks last name, and apparently there are a lot of John Does in the system, because I'm sure that a number of people have used John Doe either as a test case for training purposes, or for some reason they didn't have the full name of the friend. So you click next again, and it has now gone through the 3 stages of client identification, and you're satisfied now that this is a new case that you want to open. It's not an active case that's already being handled by somebody. And so you'll see it says there are no open cases associated with this client profile. So at this point, you select next, and you actually now open a case. So it has moved from client inquiry to the next screen where it is now truly case intake. So the first thing they're asking is a household. The household information is anybody that is living at that address. So it's roommates, it's children, it's spouses. You do not have to put the friend's name in there. You've already got the friend entered in the client profile. This is important for two reasons. One, we've had some situations where one person in a household calls us one month and another person calls us the following month, and our assistance is by household. So it'll show us that we've already helped somebody. The second way that it's used is in our monthly report. When we have statistics as far as the number of people helped, it adds up the client and everybody in the client's household to indicate the number of people helped. Oftentimes, we're told on the telephone call with the client or with the friend, and again, at St. Michael, we refer to them all as friends because they quickly become our friends. We oftentimes will hear from them, well, I've got a 2-year-old son and a 3-year-old daughter, but you don't have their names. Sometimes you say, well, tell me their names. But if you don't have their names, you can put son, Doe, just use the same last name, and they've told you the age. If you don't know the exact age, if they've told you that they're infants or young, you can guess at it. But oftentimes they'll say, I've got a son that's 3 years old. Put that in there, and it will calculate the date of birth for you. The gender is male. The relationship is a child, and the ethnicity is will assume be the same as the friend. And again, sometimes with the friend, we don't know. When we're at the client profile and we're trying to figure out the ethnicity, sometimes we'll go by hearing an accent by the telephone, sometimes we'll go by the name, but sometimes we don't know. And oftentimes we just now have a new selection called undisclosed. Before, we only had something that said mixed or other, but now we've got one that says undisclosed. So if you don't know, that's fine to put undisclosed. The ethnicity is used by the council when it applies for grants, so they like to see the demographic breakdown of who we are serving. But again, you don't have to. You can make your best guess, or you can put undisclosed. So we go back to the household. And by the way, you will notice that CMS is very linear. We progress from tab to tab to tab to tab. We can't go to these tabs because we have not progressed to them yet. If we need to change something in a prior tab, typically you have to hit the previous button to back into that in order to change it. You can't, well, you can read it by simply clicking on the tab. To actually make a change, you would have to hit the previous button and back into that tab in order to make a change. After you've made the change, hit the next button to go back to where you were. So in this case, we're going to say that John Doe only has one son, 3 years old, and we enter that information, we hit next. This is the request or the need that the client or the friend has expressed to you. This goes out in an automated email to most of the Vincentians on CMS within the St. Michael Conference. It just lets us know that a request has come in. So first you do a drop down under category, and it'll give you different categories. Most of our calls are either for rent or for utilities. Sometimes it's food, sometimes it's furniture, sometimes it's clothing, but most of the time it's rent. What we do in the comment section, usually it's not a lengthy comment, it's just a brief description that will explain the situation so that we know what the need is and whether we should be giving it a priority. So if the person has an emergency, or if they're a single mom with multiple kids with no income, it's good to try to put some of the information in the comment section. I always start off by putting my initials because it lets somebody who's looking at this know that I did the intake. So again, just something very simple where we're explaining uh, that, first of all, the person is single, has a young child, owes rent, been laid off, um, has applied for unemployment. So it shows us that he really has no income, which again helps us prioritize. Oftentimes we give the highest priority to single moms with young kids, particularly if they have no source of income, if they're undocumented and have no source of benefits. It's one that gets our attention quickly. Also, if somebody is hungry, you can also do a second line where you can put food and can put, you know, oftentimes we'll find that friends are either without transportation or can't leave their kids or can't bring their kids. And when we inquire during the home visit, how are they doing on food? Oftentimes we'll find out that they're reducing the number of times they're eating a day or that they haven't eaten in a day. In which case we try to either get an emergency pack of food, which Stacy has coordinated, or we get a gift card to them immediately if they can walk to a nearby store to do some shopping. So it just depends on their circumstance, but we need to know if there's an emergency like that. And it's particularly pressing during the pandemic because many of the food pantries have long lines and limited selections. But if they can access a food pantry, we give them information about how they can do that. Go to next. It's asking about other agencies that they've gotten help from. We rarely fill this out. Sometimes we'll describe if they've already got a pledge, but most of the time they don't have a pledge when they're calling us, and it's really nothing that we refer to. I did notice, though, on the request details that I had misspelled from. Again, if I try to go to it here, it doesn't work as well as if I back up. It will let me, by hitting the previous button, go back and actually revise this, because once I have assigned this for casework, this section can't be revised. So I changed the spelling. Again, hit next. Don't need to put anything for other agencies. And now we're getting to the tab for eligibility. For eligibility, it's saying this appears to be a new client, therefore no case history is available. And you can read what the request is. There's nothing else you need to add. And at this point, you say, I'm going to establish a new client. In CMS, you have cases and you have clients. Clients create a permanent record that oftentimes is searchable under the search profile, and cases refer to specific request. So the client refers to an individual, the cases refer to a particular request. It's just a nomenclature that's used within CMS. So when you hit next, it says submit case for caseworker assignment. This action cannot be undone. So you say yes. And it'll take you to the last tab for intake, which is, it says the case intake has been completed. Case has been filed for work assignment. Now, in the past, prior to the pandemic, we would then have one of the officers assign the case to a caseworker. And at that point, the caseworker would conduct a home visit. But what we're doing during the pandemic, we're combining the case intake with the home visit. And typically it's the person that has made the telephone home visit, the telephone call, that ends up continuing to handle this case because he or she has found out all the information about the friend and knows how we are going to assist the friend. So it's now all collapsed into one. So to end case intake, you ought to go ahead and make the assignment if you're going to be handling the case. So for the caseworker, if you can assign it to yourself. The case manager is typically one of the people that are continually working CMS and periodically checks all the cases to make sure that they're being properly handled, or that they're not getting stale, or that we're following up as promised. It doesn't matter who you select. You can select anybody you would like as the case manager. The secondary is not as critical during the pandemic, but it's nice to have a backup. So I know a number of people choose me as their secondary just so that I can get into the case record, I can help, I can do anything to assist them on the case. Some people have others that they prefer to choose, but you can either choose somebody as a backup in case you need some help on the case, or you can just leave it as blank and handle the case yourself. I think it's good to always have someone as a backup. In this case, just because it's a test case, I'm assigning everything to myself. So after you've selected that, you hit assign. And you are now finished all of the case intake. And you'll notice it goes back to your home screen. Now, I will be doing a separate tutorial on how to fill in the information for the casework. Because what you will do at this point, you'll go to your assigned cases and you'll see that John Doe is now there. You select John Doe and it opens a whole new set of screens where you go through and describe your visit. You have a chance to update the information about the friend and the friend's household. You describe what their situation is. You enter a pledge for what we are going to do to assist them. If there's a document you would like to attach, you can attach. And then once all of that has been done, the pledge or the check request or anything that you have done by way of assistance waits for the friend to call us back at some point to tell us that they are ready for the payment. So I will do that in a separate tutorial, but hopefully this has been helpful to you. If you have any questions concerning case intake, just give me a call anytime and we can walk through this. We can also do a separate Zoom conference and let you walk through it on your screen while I'm watching. So you have lots of options open to you. I hope this has been helpful.